Little girl gave a secret signal to the royal guard. He instantly broke protocol. The morning sun had just begun to rise over the royal palace, casting a golden glow across its tall towers and polished gates. Birds chirped cheerfully in the gardens, and the aroma of fresh bread from the nearby bakery floated through the air. Clara, a little girl of 7, walked along the cobblestone streets leading to the palace. She had bright, curious eyes and a small, determined smile on her face. Today was a special day for her. She had something very important to do, but she could not tell anyone else. It was a secret that only she knew, a secret passed down by her grandmother, who had always told her that courage and clever thinking were as valuable as any treasure in the world. Clara clutched a tiny, folded piece of parchment in her hand. The paper was old and a little wrinkled, but it contained information that only a few trusted people in the palace would understand. Her grandmother had always warned her to be careful, to watch the palace guards, and to give a special signal if something was wrong. Clara had practiced this signal many times in front of the mirror, making sure it was subtle enough that adults might not notice, but clear enough that someone who understood would act immediately. As she approached the palace gates, the crowd grew thicker. Visitors from all over the kingdom had come to see the royal gardens, and children played near the fountains. Clara stayed close to the wall, her small frame weaving quietly through the crowd. She had learned to observe everything around her, the guards standing stiffly on their posts, the way they glanced at visitors, and even the tiniest movements of their hands. She knew that one wrong move could get her into trouble, but she also knew the importance of what she had to do. Captain Elias, the senior guard of the palace, stood tall near the main gate. His uniform was perfectly pressed, and his hat sat at a precise angle. Every morning he patrolled the gates and the courtyard, ensuring that nothing unusual happened. He had served the royal family for many years, and his dedication to protocol was unmatched. Guards were taught to follow rules strictly, to never act without orders, and to always protect the palace. Yet there was something different about this morning. Something small but unusual caught his eye, a flicker of movement, almost like a tiny dance among the crowd. Clara, realizing she had reached the edge of the courtyard, paused and looked up at Captain Elias. She took a deep breath and gave the signal she had practiced so many times. It was so slight that most people would never notice, a small lift of her hand followed by a gentle twist of her fingers. But Elias, trained to observe every detail, saw it instantly. His heart skipped a beat. It was not a casual gesture. It was the same signal used by the palace's trusted network in emergencies, a signal that meant something very important was about to happen. For a moment, Elias froze. His mind raced. Guards were not supposed to act without orders, and he knew that breaking protocol could result in serious consequences. But he also knew that Clara's signal was deliberate. Her eyes, wide and earnest, held no hint of fear or mischief, only urgency. He could see that the little girl was trying to tell him something important, something that required immediate attention. Clara took a small step forward and folded the piece of parchment slightly, hiding it in her palm. She knew that if she drew attention to herself, people might notice, and the secret could be lost. She moved carefully, making her way closer to Elias, all while keeping her signal steady. She hoped that he would understand her message without her saying a word. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her small shoulders, but she also felt a quiet confidence. Her grandmother had trusted her with this mission, and she intended to fulfill it. Elias' eyes narrowed as he studied her. He had seen many visitors and children before, but there was something different about Clara. She was calm, focused, and deliberate. Most children would have been distracted by the palace gardens or the fountains, but not her. She had a purpose, and he could sense it. Something inside him told him that this was no ordinary visit. His training told him to wait for orders, but another voice inside him whispered that waiting could be dangerous. As Clara moved closer, she felt a slight tremble in her hands. It was not fear but anticipation. She had to make sure that Elias understood her signal correctly. One wrong interpretation could ruin everything. She glanced around quickly, making sure no one was watching too closely. Most people were focused on the flowers, the fountains, or taking pictures. Only Elias seemed to notice her small movements. Elias, sensing her urgency, stepped slightly forward. He had been trained to observe even the tiniest details, and Clara's movements were precise and intentional. He remembered the old codes his superiors had taught him, codes that were rarely used and almost forgotten. And yet, something about this little girl's gesture reminded him of those codes. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew that following protocol meant waiting for confirmation, but he also knew that sometimes instinct and careful observation mattered more than rules. Clara, seeing that Elias had recognized her signal, felt a small wave of relief. She nodded ever so slightly to herself and continued her careful approach. Every step she took was measured and deliberate. She had been taught to stay calm and think clearly, no matter the situation. Her grandmother had always said that bravery was not about acting without fear, but about acting despite fear. Clara felt a deep sense of purpose as she moved closer to the guard who could help her. The crowd around them continued to move, unaware of the silent communication taking place between the little girl and the captain. People laughed, merchants called out their wares, and children ran around playing tag. In the middle of all this normal activity, a small secret drama was unfolding. Clara's eyes never left Elias, and he, in turn, never looked away from her. It was a silent understanding, a quiet trust that did not need words. Finally, Clara reached a point where she could safely show him the parchment. She held it carefully, making sure not to reveal it to anyone else. Elias bent slightly, his eyes scanning the paper. What he saw made him take a deep breath. The information was clear but urgent. Something was happening inside the palace, something that required immediate attention. Every instinct in his body told him that waiting for orders would be too late. He had a decision to make, one that could either protect the palace or put it in danger. Clara watched him carefully, her small heart beating quickly. She trusted him to understand, and he had to trust her signal. In that instant, there was no need for words. Everything was understood between them, the urgency, the danger, and the need for immediate action. Elias straightened his posture, his mind racing but his decision clear. He would act, even if it meant breaking the usual rules. For a few moments, the world seemed to stand still. The birds in the gardens chirped, the fountain water sparkled in the sunlight, and the palace gates glimmered in the morning light. Yet beneath this peaceful scene, a hidden urgency pulsed between a little girl and a royal guard. It was a quiet, invisible thread of trust that could change everything in the moments to come. Clara, feeling a small sense of accomplishment, took another careful step back, giving Elias the space he needed to act. She knew her part of the mission had been done correctly. Now it was up to him. The little hand's signal, the careful folding of the parchment, the silent trust, they had all worked. And in that moment she understood something important. Courage was not about being the biggest or the strongest. It was about doing what was right, even when no one else could see or understand. Elias glanced around, taking in the surroundings one last time. Guards continued their usual patrols, and visitors moved about, unaware of the silent message that had just been passed. He knew that acting quickly and decisively was the only way to protect the palace. He took a deep breath, feeling a quiet respect for the small girl who had trusted him with such an important secret. Clara watched him, a small smile forming on her lips. She had done what she came to do, and she could feel that the next steps would unfold quickly. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, knowing that the moment of action was coming. Yet she also felt proud. She had acted with courage and intelligence, following the lessons her grandmother had taught her. She knew that no matter what happened next, she had done her part. And so, in the bright morning light, with the palace alive around them and the crowd unaware of what had just happened, a silent understanding passed between a little girl and a royal guard. It was a moment that seemed small but carried immense importance, a beginning of a story that would soon unfold with urgency, bravery, and quiet heroism. After the little girl, Clara, had given her secret signal, Captain Elias knew he had to act quickly. His mind raced as he considered the situation. The palace was a place of tradition and strict rules. Guards were trained to follow every order, never to step outside protocol, but something about Clara's signal was different. It was urgent, precise, and unmistakable. He felt a pull in his chest, a silent insistence that waiting could be disastrous. He glanced around, making sure no one was observing too closely, and then he moved discreetly toward the inner courtyard. Clara followed at a careful distance, her small feet barely making a sound on the cobblestones. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her grandmother had prepared her for this, teaching her the secret codes and the importance of timing. Clara had practiced for months, rehearsing every gesture, every glance, every movement until it became natural. Now all her preparation was coming to life. She watched Elias closely as he adjusted his uniform and signaled other guards with subtle gestures, letting them know that something unusual was happening. Inside the courtyard, the palace was alive with activity. Staff moved quickly, tending to the gardens, preparing rooms, and welcoming visitors. Musicians played soft melodies near the main hall, and the aroma of freshly baked pastries drifted from the kitchen. But amid this ordinary bustle, a quiet tension hung in the air. Elias' eyes darted from one corridor to another, noting anything that seemed out of place. He knew that even a single mistake could allow the threat to go unnoticed. Clara clutched the parchment tightly in her hand. The words on it were clear and urgent. It described a plan by someone within the palace to access restricted areas without permission. The details were enough to alarm any guard who read them. Elias, recognizing the gravity of the information, knew that he had to act immediately. He could not wait for higher approval or formal confirmation. Every second counted, and the safety of the royal family depended on swift action. Elias turned to Clara and spoke softly so no one else could hear. "Show me exactly where the danger is." Clara nodded, understanding that she had to guide him carefully. She led him through the corridors, her small hand occasionally brushing against the wall to keep her balance and to stay unnoticed. The palace, though grand and magnificent, had many secret passages and narrow hallways that most visitors never saw. Clara knew them well, having explored under her grandmother's guidance. Every turn she took was deliberate, every step calculated. As they moved deeper into the palace, Elias noticed subtle signs that confirmed the threat. Doors that were supposed to be locked were slightly ajar, and staff who should have been in certain areas were missing. He whispered to Clara, asking her to remain close and to keep quiet. Clara nodded, her heart racing, but she felt a calm determination. She had trained for moments like this, and she knew that fear would not help her now. They reached a small, hidden room near the treasury, a place few people ever entered. Clara peeked inside and then turned to Elias, signaling him with another subtle gesture. He understood immediately. Inside the room, a figure moved silently, trying to access a secure chest that contained valuable documents and jewels. Elias' jaw tightened. He had never seen anyone attempt such a bold act within the palace walls. Yet he knew that the person was unprepared for the presence of a trained guard. Clara stayed close to Elias, careful not to draw attention. She whispered softly, "We have to stop them before they get what they want." Elias nodded, formulating a plan. He would need to act decisively, but he also needed to ensure that no one else was harmed and that the intruder did not escape. Clara watched, her small hands gripping the parchment, feeling both anxious and proud. She knew that her signal had set everything in motion. Without it, Elias might never have noticed the threat in time. Elias moved silently, positioning himself near the doorway. He signaled to two nearby guards who had noticed his subtle gestures and followed him cautiously. The guards' eyes widened as they realized the seriousness of the situation. Elias gave a final nod to Clara, signaling that she had done her part. Clara understood and took a step back, keeping herself hidden but close enough to see what happened next. With a quick motion, Elias stepped into the room and confronted the intruder. The person froze, clearly surprised by the sudden appearance of the guards. Elias' voice was calm but firm. "Stop right there. You are not allowed to be here." The intruder hesitated, and in that moment, Elias and the two guards moved forward, carefully surrounding them. The intruder tried to escape, but the quick coordination of the guards prevented any movement. Elias' training and Clara's warning had made it possible to act before the situation escalated. Clara watched the scene unfold, her heart pounding. She could hardly believe that her small hand signal had led to this moment. She felt a surge of pride and relief. The intruder was caught, the palace was safe, and the danger had been averted. Yet she also knew that there would be questions later. People would ask how the intruder was discovered, and her involvement had to remain a secret. She glanced at Elias, who gave her a small, reassuring nod. He understood that she had played a crucial role in this moment, even if no one else did. Elias turned to the intruder and secured them carefully, ensuring that they could not cause any further harm. He then signaled the other guards to check nearby areas for additional threats. Clara stayed close, listening to the soft footsteps and hushed voices of the guards as they moved through the corridors. The palace, which had seemed peaceful and calm in the morning light, now carried an air of quiet vigilance. Every movement mattered, every sound was important. After ensuring that the intruder was safely in custody, Elias spoke to Clara softly. "You did well," he said. "Your signal saved the palace." Clara felt a warm glow of pride and happiness. She had acted bravely and carefully, and her courage had made a real difference. Elias smiled at her and gently reminded her, "Remember, secrecy is important. No one else can know what you did today." Clara nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of his words. The morning continued, but the palace was no longer the same. Guards moved with more alertness, aware that a hidden danger had been discovered. Staff whispered among themselves, sensing that something unusual had occurred, though they did not know the details. Clara and Elias continued their quiet observation, making sure that everything was secure. They checked rooms, doors, and corridors, leaving nothing to chance. Clara felt a mixture of relief and excitement. She had been part of something important, something that required courage, intelligence, and careful action. She realized that even though she was small, her actions had a big impact. Elias, on the other hand, felt a renewed respect for the bravery of a child and the importance of listening carefully, even to those who might seem powerless. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the palace slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Visitors wandered the gardens, musicians played soft tunes, and staff went about their duties. Yet the hidden story of the morning, the quiet courage of Clara and the decisive actions of Captain Elias, remained known only to a few. It was a reminder that bravery could come in unexpected forms and that even the smallest gestures could have a profound effect. Clara finally felt she could breathe a little easier. Her part in the morning's events was complete, and the palace was safe. Yet she also understood that being brave was not about seeking attention or praise. It was about doing what was right when it mattered most. She glanced at Elias one last time, and he smiled knowingly, acknowledging the silent bond they shared. The day continued, filled with the ordinary sounds and sights of palace life. But for Clara, this day would always be remembered. She had given a secret signal, trusted her instincts, and seen the result of her actions in real time. She had learned that courage was not measured by size or age, but by the willingness to act wisely and decisively. And she had seen firsthand that even a single, small action could change the course of events in ways that mattered greatly. As the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the palace gardens, Clara left the inner courtyard quietly. She walked with careful steps, her mind replaying the morning's events. Every gesture, every decision, and every moment of bravery had led to the palace being safe. And although no one else might know the story, she knew the truth. She had played a vital role in protecting the royal family, and that knowledge filled her heart with pride. Captain Elias remained vigilant, patrolling the palace with renewed focus. He knew that the world could always bring unexpected challenges, and sometimes trust and courage came from the most unexpected places. Today, that trust had come from a little girl with a secret signal, and it had made all the difference. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Elias allowed himself a small smile. The palace was safe for now, and the courage of one small child had proven that even the smallest voice could be powerful. The palace had returned to its usual rhythm, but Captain Elias felt a tension that refused to leave him. The incident that morning with Clara and the intruder had been a warning. Someone inside the palace had tried to access restricted areas, and that could not happen again. Elias walked through the corridors, his footsteps echoing softly against the marble floors. He observed every detail, the position of the guards, the movements of the staff, even the way the sunlight fell through the windows. Nothing could be left to chance. Clara followed quietly behind him, her small frame barely noticeable. She felt both proud and nervous. The excitement of the morning's events had not faded, and she knew that the danger might not be over yet. She clutched the small parchment tightly in her hand, the paper now slightly worn from being folded and unfolded so many times. It contained instructions and warnings, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility she had carried so bravely. As they reached the grand hall, Elias paused. He knew that acting too quickly without understanding the full picture could cause unnecessary panic. Yet waiting too long could allow the threat to grow. He glanced at Clara and saw the determination in her eyes. She had not only delivered the warning, but had guided him to the source of the danger with courage and precision. He realized that the little girl's intelligence and bravery were extraordinary. "Clara," he said softly, "we need to move carefully. There might be more than one person involved." Clara nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. She had sensed it too. The morning's intruder might have been part of a larger plan. Every instinct inside her told her that the palace could still be at risk. They moved through hidden passages and quiet corridors, making sure to stay out of sight of the other staff and visitors. Elias signaled the nearby guards with subtle gestures, instructing them to be alert and ready without alarming anyone. The palace, magnificent and full of life, now felt like a place of secrets and silent danger. Clara felt a thrill of nervous excitement. Every step they took was important. Every decision could change the outcome of the day. As they approached the treasury doors, Elias noticed something unusual. The locks were intact, but there were fresh scratches near the handles, signs that someone had attempted to tamper with them earlier. He crouched to examine the marks, his trained eyes noticing every detail. Clara leaned in slightly, her small hand brushing his arm for balance. She felt a sense of urgency rise in her chest. The intruder had been clever, and it was clear that whoever was behind this had not given up. Elias straightened and looked at Clara. "We have to act," he said quietly. "This is no longer a drill. If we wait for orders, we risk giving the intruder time to strike again. I need to break protocol to protect the palace." Clara's eyes widened slightly. She had heard adults talk about protocol, rules that no one could break, but she also understood the importance of action. She nodded, giving him her silent agreement. She trusted him, and she knew that this decision could make all the difference. Elias moved swiftly, signaling the guards to secure nearby areas while he prepared to confront the threat. Clara followed closely, her heart racing but her steps steady. She had been part of the plan from the start, and now she would witness the importance of courage and quick thinking in action. They reached a side corridor leading to the inner treasury, a place where very few people were allowed. The air was cooler here, and the sound of distant footsteps echoed softly. Elias gestured for Clara to stay behind him, ensuring she remained safe while he took the lead. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the hallway ahead. Elias froze, his senses sharpening. Clara instinctively ducked slightly, her small body tense with anticipation. The intruder from the morning had returned, or perhaps there was someone else involved. Elias signaled the guards to approach from another corridor, effectively cornering the figure. The intruder moved quickly, but Elias was faster. With a calm but firm voice, he commanded, "Stop! You are not allowed to be here." The figure hesitated, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. Elias stepped closer, keeping his posture authoritative and calm. The intruder tried to speak, but Elias held up a hand, signaling them to remain silent. Clara watched carefully, her small hands gripping the parchment. She felt a mixture of awe and fear. She had helped trigger these events, but she had never imagined how close danger could come. The intruder's plan became clear within moments. They were attempting to access not just the treasury, but also the royal archives, seeking documents that could compromise the palace. Elias' mind worked quickly, formulating a plan that would stop the intruder without harming anyone else. He signaled the guards to move in from different angles, creating a situation where the intruder could not escape. Every motion was precise, every decision calculated. Clara, observing from a safe distance, felt a rush of pride. The little hand signal she had given that morning had led to this moment. She had trusted her instincts, and Elias had trusted hers. Together, they had managed to uncover a threat that could have been disastrous. She realized that bravery was not about acting alone, but about trust, teamwork, and understanding when to act. Elias addressed the intruder firmly. "You will come with us. Any further resistance will not be tolerated." The intruder seemed to realize that escape was impossible. They raised their hands slowly, surrendering to the authority of the guards. Elias quickly secured them, making sure that the intruder could not cause further harm. The palace was safe once again, but Elias knew this was not the end. There were likely more challenges ahead, and he had to remain vigilant. Clara stepped closer cautiously, her small voice barely audible. "Is it over?" she asked. Elias looked down at her and smiled gently. "For now, yes," he replied. "Thanks to you, we prevented a disaster." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. She had done something truly important, something that mattered in a way she had never imagined. Her small actions had led to real results, and she felt proud of herself and grateful for the trust Elias had placed in her. Elias took a deep breath and signaled the guards to continue their inspection of the palace. They checked every corridor, every room, and every hidden passage to ensure that no other threats remained. Clara followed closely, observing the meticulous work of the guards and feeling a sense of responsibility. She understood that safety was not just about catching one intruder, but about vigilance, care, and careful observation. As they moved through the palace, Elias spoke softly to Clara. "You were brave today. Not many children could have done what you did. But remember, courage is not about showing off. It's about acting wisely when it matters most." Clara nodded, taking his words to heart. She had learned that true bravery was quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes invisible to everyone else. The palace staff began to notice subtle changes in the day's routine. Guards were more alert, staff whispered to each other, and the air felt charged with quiet vigilance. Yet the visitors continued their activities, unaware of the hidden drama that had taken place. Clara moved among them, her small figure blending in perfectly. She felt a sense of accomplishment and humility. She had played an important part, but she had done so quietly without seeking praise or attention. Elias continued to patrol the inner corridors, ensuring that every precaution was taken. He signaled the guards to remain alert and coordinated, reinforcing the lessons learned from the morning's events. Clara stayed near him, her eyes sharp and attentive. She had witnessed the importance of careful planning, quick thinking, and decisive action. The palace was safe for now, but both Elias and Clara knew that vigilance could never end completely. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace halls, Elias finally allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about the unusual trust he had placed in a small child, and how it had been repaid with courage, intelligence, and careful judgment. Clara had reminded him that sometimes the smallest voices could carry the greatest wisdom, and that bravery could come from unexpected places. Clara, feeling both tired and exhilarated, walked quietly behind Elias. She knew that the day had changed her. She had learned about trust, responsibility, and the power of careful observation. She had learned that even someone small and young could make a real difference when they acted wisely and bravely. Her heart was full of quiet pride, and she understood that true courage was about more than just action. It was about insight, preparation, and timing. The palace slowly returned to a more ordinary pace, but Elias remained alert. He knew that danger could always arise in unexpected ways. He kept a watchful eye on the staff, the visitors, and the corridors. Clara followed quietly, still carrying the parchment and the memory of her hand's signal. She knew that her actions that morning had made a difference, and she also knew that she had grown stronger, wiser, and braver because of the experience. As evening approached, the palace glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. The fountains sparkled, the gardens cast long shadows, and the quiet hum of palace life continued. Elias and Clara walked together through the halls, their silent bond of trust unspoken but understood. They had faced a challenge, acted decisively, and ensured the safety of the palace. And in that quiet, shared understanding, both of them realized something important. Courage, intelligence, and trust were more powerful than any rule, protocol, or expectation. For Clara, the day had been a lesson in bravery, responsibility, and careful thinking. For Elias, it had been a reminder that even the most unexpected ally could become the key to protecting what mattered most. Together, they had faced danger, made difficult decisions, and acted with wisdom and courage. And though the palace continued its daily routines, both of them knew that the events of the day would be remembered quietly, as a testament to the power of trust, bravery, and the courage to act when it truly mattered. The evening sky above the palace was painted with shades of orange and pink, and a gentle breeze moved through the gardens. The fountains sparkled in the soft light, and the palace seemed calm, almost unaware of the day's events. Yet inside the walls, there was a quiet sense of relief, a feeling that the palace had been protected from danger thanks to quick thinking and courage. Captain Elias walked through the halls with Clara close behind him, ensuring that every corridor and room was secure before the day ended. Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Her small hands were tired from clutching the parchment, and her feet ached from walking the long corridors, but her heart was full. She had been part of something extraordinary. A simple hand signal she had practiced countless times had triggered actions that protected the royal family. The thought made her chest swell with quiet pride, but she also felt humble. She knew that her role, though important, was part of a larger team that had worked together to ensure safety. Elias paused near the inner courtyard and looked around. The guards were now more alert than ever, stationed at key points and observing everything with careful eyes. He signaled them discreetly to return to their usual posts while keeping a subtle sense of vigilance. He wanted to make sure that while the palace returned to normal, no one would let their guard down too soon. The intruder had been captured, but Elias knew that threats could come in unexpected ways, and preparedness was always necessary. Clara watched him, her eyes reflecting admiration and trust. She understood the importance of responsibility and vigilance, lessons her grandmother had instilled in her from a young age. Today had proven that even someone small and young could make a big difference if they were careful, brave, and thoughtful. She thought about how her tiny hand signal had changed everything. The thought was exciting, but also a little overwhelming. Elias finally turned to her and spoke in a gentle voice. "Clara, you were very brave today. I want you to remember that courage is not about being fearless. It's about acting wisely even when there is danger." Clara nodded, understanding fully. She had felt fear at times, but she had acted carefully and with thought. Her grandmother's lessons had guided her, and Elias' trust had given her confidence to act. She realized that true courage was quiet, steady, and thoughtful. The two of them moved toward the main hall, where the royal family was gathering for the evening. Word had reached the king and queen about the attempted intrusion, but not the details. The palace officials wanted to maintain calm, and the family was unaware of the danger they had narrowly escaped. Elias wanted it this way. Clara's involvement had to remain a secret to protect her and ensure she could continue her life without fear. Yet the royal family deserved to know that the palace had been kept safe, and Elias prepared to explain what had happened. As they entered the hall, the king noticed the unusual tension in the guards' faces. He asked calmly, "Captain Elias, what is happening? Why does the palace feel different tonight?" Elias bowed slightly and replied, "Your Majesty, there was a threat earlier today. It has been neutralized and the palace is secure. The intruder has been captured and no harm came to anyone." The king's eyes narrowed slightly and he asked, "How was it discovered so quickly?" Elias hesitated for a moment, remembering Clara's role. He could not reveal everything, but he wanted to give credit where it was due. "Your Majesty," Elias said carefully, "the alert came from someone very observant. Thanks to their quick thinking, we were able to prevent a serious problem." The queen's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and the king leaned forward. "Who?" he asked softly, though he suspected it was one of the palace staff. Elias smiled faintly. "It was someone small but incredibly clever. Their insight helped save the palace today." Clara felt her heart skip a beat, realizing that Elias had found a way to acknowledge her courage without revealing her identity fully. After the initial briefing, Elias escorted Clara to a quiet part of the palace garden. The evening air was cool, and the sound of fountains filled the silence. Clara breathed deeply, feeling relief wash over her. The danger had been stopped, and she had been part of it. She looked up at Elias and whispered, "Will anyone know what I did?" Elias shook his head gently. "Not everyone, Clara, but that is not why you acted. You did the right thing because it mattered, not for recognition. That is what makes your courage remarkable." Clara felt a warmth in her heart, understanding fully that her bravery was meaningful even if unseen by the world. As they walked through the garden, the stars began to appear in the night sky. Clara pointed at a bright one and said softly, "It feels like the stars are watching." Elias chuckled softly. Maybe they are remembering those who act bravely, quietly, and wisely." "Tonight, they remember you." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection with the world around her. She realized that courage, trust, and responsibility were things that could shine brighter than any star, even if they were not always noticed by everyone. Suddenly, they heard footsteps behind them. A young palace page approached, holding a small note. Elias took it carefully and read it. It was a message of thanks from one of the senior officials, acknowledging the swift actions of the palace guards without naming Clara. Elias smiled faintly and handed the note to her. "This is for you in a way. Your quick thinking helped make all this possible." Clara held it carefully, feeling a sense of quiet pride. She understood that her actions had made a real difference, and that was more important than words of praise. Later that evening, the palace returned fully to its peaceful routine. Visitors enjoyed the gardens, staff continued their duties, and the royal family prepared for the night. Clara sat quietly by a fountain, reflecting on the day's events. She thought about the lessons she had learned about trust, courage, observation, and acting wisely. She also thought about her grandmother, who had prepared her for this very moment. Every gesture, every signal, and every careful decision had mattered, and she felt grateful for the guidance she had received. Elias joined her, sitting quietly on a nearby bench. He looked at Clara with admiration. "You have shown wisdom beyond your years," he said softly. "Most adults would not have noticed the signs you saw, most would not have acted as you did. You reminded me today that bravery comes in many forms." Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had always wanted to help others, but she had never imagined that her small actions could have such a powerful impact. The two of them remained in the garden for a while, enjoying the calm evening. The palace lights reflected in the fountains, creating a soft glow. Clara felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She realized that courage was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, thoughtful, and invisible to most people. Yet, it could still change the world in meaningful ways. As the night deepened, Elias escorted Clara back to the part of the palace where she lived. He reminded her of the importance of rest and careful thought. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight you have learned something important," he said. Clara nodded, understanding fully. She had discovered that intelligence, observation, trust, and bravery could protect others and make a real difference, even when no one else noticed. Before leaving, Elias knelt down to her level and said, "Remember, Clara, the true measure of bravery is not in recognition, but in doing the right thing when it matters most. Tonight, you have proven that in every way." Clara's eyes glistened with tears of quiet happiness. She felt proud but also humble, knowing that her actions had been guided by careful thought and trust. She whispered softly, "I will remember." Clara went to her room, placing the small parchment carefully in a drawer. It had been her guide, her connection to her grandmother's wisdom, and her reminder of the day's lessons. She lay down on her bed, thinking about the events that had unfolded. Her heart was full of pride, and her mind was alive with reflections on courage, responsibility, and quiet heroism. She knew that even though she was small, her actions mattered. She had learned that intelligence and careful thinking could be just as powerful as strength and experience. The palace, now quiet and peaceful under the starry night, seemed to hold its breath in satisfaction. The danger had passed, thanks to the trust between a little girl and a devoted guard. Clara's bravery, though quiet, had made all the difference, and as she drifted into sleep, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had acted wisely, courageously, and carefully. The palace was safe, and she had grown in ways she would never forget. Captain Elias returned to his post one last time before retiring for the night. He looked around at the palace, reflecting on the day's events. He realized that courage and wisdom could come from unexpected places. Clara, with her small hand signal and careful guidance, had reminded him that even the youngest and smallest could make a great difference. He allowed himself a small, quiet smile. The palace was safe, the threat had been stopped, and the story of bravery would remain quietly, a testament to intelligence, trust, and courage. And so the night settled over the palace, calm and serene. Clara slept peacefully, dreaming of stars and gardens and quiet heroism. Captain Elias rested, knowing that today had proven something extraordinary, that courage, trust, and careful thinking could change the course of events and protect those who could not always protect themselves. The palace remained secure, the royal family safe, and the lessons of the day, bravery, wisdom, and trust, would remain quietly, shining like stars in the hearts of those who understood them.